You want to kick us off, yeah, with a CLCC intro, or do you want me to jump in?
Will do. Just trying to get my screen together. There we go. All right. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. So let these folks. All right. So my name is Yao, and I am the Director of Grants and Programs for the Connecticut Land Conservation Council. In my role, I oversee our grant making portfolio and help our conservation partners with finding different grant opportunities. For those of you who may be new to CLCC, CLCC is the umbrella organization for the state's land conservation community. We provide technical, capacity building, and financial assistance to land trusts, along with advocating for land conservation statewide. In partnership with CT Deep, we are offering this second info session to provide potential applicants with the opportunity to learn about the state's open space and urban green funding programs. We will also highlight some of CLCC's grant programs as well. To get us started, I will turn things over to Lindsay.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining at dinner time. We will run through some presentations, but if you want to put questions in the chat that we can refer back to or wait till after, I think this is probably a small enough group that we can have people raise hands and ask questions once my section is done, and then maybe we'll do the same thing for Yao's section so that you can remember your questions. So I will jump in. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. All right. Can everybody see that? Give me a thumbs up. Yeah. Looks good.
Yes.
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 Okay. All right. So, Lindsay Sir, I'm the Office Director for Land Acquisition and Management here at Deep, and we're the real estate, essentially the real estate office for the agency. So, on top of some of these grant programs that I'm going to go through tonight, we also do all acquisitions for new state parks, wildlife management areas, forests, etc. And we have some other aspects in our office as well. But what I'm going to focus on tonight are a few grant programs for open space protection and open space enhancement that our office runs through state funding. The first one I'm going to talk about is our open space grant program called OSWA. The purchase of permanent interests in land. So either purchasing the property by an organization or purchasing a conservation easement are the purposes of this grant program. And the entities that are eligible are municipalities, nonprofits, typically land trusts, and then water companies. For this grant program, there's some differences for depending on if you're a municipality and where the location is for your project. So if you are a municipality, nonprofit, or water company, and your project is in an environmental justice community, distressed municipality, or targeted investment community, and I have a slide later which kind of can show you how you can determine that, your project can get 75% of the value of the property. So when you apply for this grant program, you get an appraised value of the property in question. And if you are in one of those communities, you can get 75% of the cost of that property acquisition. If you are not, the highest amount that you can get is 65% of the value of the property. So this is the Max Grant Award. In recent years, we have been able to give out Max Grant Awards, and it just depends on the funding availability year over year. What's new in the last couple years is that in those communities, you can also be reimbursed for incidental costs that are associated with this. So what I mean by incidental costs are the appraisal that you need to get in order to find out the value of the property, survey costs, which you do after you've been awarded a grant. You have to get a survey of the property, and then any legal or environmental assessment costs that would come when you're acquiring the property. If you are in one of those targeted, distressed, or environmental justice communities, your project can get these things paid for through our grant program. So this is the map on our website, and if you go through our grant materials, there's a link online to access this map. You can type in an address, you can zoom into a location, and if you are in one of these orange or pink, the colors are very similar, so I apologize. But if you're in one of these orange or pink areas, you would qualify for that additional funding. Additionally, there's a list within our grant application talks about targeted investment communities, and that's probably a handful to 8 communities across the state that are listed within statute for that. For the OSWA grant program, we have 4 main score criteria sections. So the application is kind of set up this way. And the first is our administrative and community support. So we try to make sure that you've efficient mapping, you've aligned with local and state plans, you have support letters, and you've done outreach to the community about this program and this project that you're looking at, and that there's past grant compliance. So primarily what that means is if you have had a former award for our grant program, we want to make sure that it's open to the public, that you're following through on the what's conservation easement uh, requirements, and that you're providing some sort of sign or parking that acknowledges the grant program. The next would be public access and outdoor recreation. So we're looking at how is this going to provide access for the public? Is it going to be a trail that connects to a series of other trails? Is it going to be a fishing access? Is it going to be some other form of public access? And you would provide materials that show how it connects to other greenways, what kind of public outreach you've done for this portion of it. The next one would be environmental justice and equity. So you would get higher points or points within this section if you can show greater community impact in one of those distressed or targeted or environmental justice communities. You have proximity to public transportation. So you can get to the site from the center of Waterbury via public transportation. That would give you extra points. If your project is within a certain distance from mixed income housing and you've aligned with some of our environmental justice recommendations from some of our past reports, you would get higher points within this section. And then the last section, which people won't be surprised because we're Connecticut deep, there's a whole section on climate change and natural resources. So how does this property advance forest conservation and wetland and drinking water conservation? How does it protect farmland soils or wildlife and fisheries natural resources? Like I said before, for this program, it requires a yellow book appraisal, which is a slightly higher appraisal level than a regular what's called use path appraisal. Yellow book appraisals need to be in any federal funding as well. So DEEP is contemplating potentially in the future, not for this round, but potentially in the future, changing our appraisal standards to a lower standard so it's easier for people to find appraisers that can do this work. But right now for this round, you need one yellow book appraisal when you submit your application. And then like a month later, you need an appraisal review that confirms that that appraisal is yellow book compliant. So if you have questions on any of this, there is some guidance within our funding booklet. And then you could also reach out and ask questions like, what's the best way to find a good yellow book appraiser? Do you have recommendations? And we can provide some feedback on that as well. If you are applying for federal funding, I will note that you need both the fee simple, so the price in the appraisal of the cost of the purchasing the property, and the easement value for the property when you apply for our grant program, if it's going to be combined with federal funding. This program, since 1998, has provided almost $200 million and protected about 50,000 acres, which is pretty great. We've had some pretty big years recently. In the last like 3 or 4 years, we've been averaging about 2,000 acres per year through this program, so that's great. And it's helping us get further in our goals for open space protection across the state. The main contact for this program is Allison Clark. She's been working on this program at Deep for probably 15 years, so she's a wealth of knowledge. So if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, but Allison is probably your best bet for detailed information about the OSWA program, and we can be back and forth to talk about potential projects if needed. The other program that I wanted to focus on is our Urban Green and Community Garden program. So this is based on kind of a subset of the statute that set up the open space program. And this program is open to both nonprofits and municipalities. And the project site has to be within that distressed municipality, target investment community, or environmental justice community. So recently, in the last 2 years, we added environmental justice community to the eligible locations here, and that added about 48 additional communities that now qualify. So it's really important if you're interested in this program, check that map, see if your project location is in one of these areas or adjacent. So we just changed the statute last year that allows for projects that are adjacent to these areas to qualify as well. So look at the map, see, read the materials, and if you have any questions at all, please reach out. This program, it's not as extensive as our open space application. You know, the projects are for creating, enhancing, or restoring an urban public community garden or green space. So we funded community gardens across multiple municipalities. We funded minor trail projects. We funded bioswales and rain gardens. We funded planting, native plantings in some larger projects. So if you have a larger project, say you have a project like you're rehabbing an entire park or an entire property, and part of it is you're going to replace ball fields and you're going to replace infrastructure and buildings and stuff. This funding can't be used for those expenses, but it might be able to be used in conjunction with that funding to, you know, put in a new rain garden or a bioswale, to put in native plantings or gardens or a walking pathway. Eligible expenses for this, it can be materials, professional services, minor structures like tool sheds and tools and benches, and then it can also cover rental equipment. We're pretty flexible with what can be covered. The one thing that can't be covered, which we'd love to change in the future, but right now you can't cover staff costs with it. It does require a 50% match, but we are flexible in what qualifies. So if you have one of those larger infrastructure projects, and this is just a minor part of it, you'll easily be able to meet match with some of those infrastructure costs, even though they can't be paid by this grant program. We can also accept donated materials, professional services, and volunteer labor as match for this program. The application requirements are minor compared to our open space grant program. You need to provide ownership documents, so we need to know that the entity that's applying actually owns the property. We need to see a narrative project description. We need some sort of site plans. Again, we're pretty flexible in site plans. We've gotten professional engineer drawings down to like a map with, you know, the features of what people are doing drawn on the map, so we can at least see where and what is going to be placed in what locations. So it doesn't have to be a professionally drawn site plan, but we need to see some sort of site plan to understand where the money is going and where the features are going to be on the landscape. We need to understand how this is going to be maintained in the future, so some sort of a plan for future maintenance and stewardship of this project. And then we need a pretty detailed budget table to understand what's covered by grant, what's covered by match sources, and the unit and item costs of these parts. And then minor things like, how is this consistent with local plans of conservation? And what are local support letters? How did you do outreach to the community to understand what and why this project is important? This project, since 2007, has given 5.9 million to eligible cities and towns. I will say that the program is growing. So 2 years ago, we gave out 3 grants, and this year we gave out 15. 2 years ago, we gave out, I want to say it was like $300,000, and this year we gave out 2.4 million. So it's a growing program. It's one that I think has a lot to offer, and I'm excited to see some of the new projects that will come forth. Right now, the contact for this is Cameron Clegg. He is interim. We will have a new staff member helping with this grant program soon, but for now, reaching out to Cameron or myself to answer questions on this program would be helpful. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is additional funding. So DEEP manages a federal grant source of funding called the Highlands Conservation Act. This is funding that's provided by the Fish and Wildlife Service. It has similar eligible entities, municipalities and nonprofits or land trusts, but the projects have to be within what they call the Highlands boundary. So I'll show a map in a couple slides that shows what the boundary is. It's mostly northwest Connecticut. This doesn't require an additional application at this point or even interest letter. It's solicited with the OSWA grant program. So when you submit your application for open space funding through our grant program, you would indicate your interest on it, and then we look at what projects qualify and what projects can be funded through this funding source. And then if your project is selected, it can be combined with our state funding for up to 90% of the cost of the property acquisition. The program priorities are pretty similar to DEEP's open space programs, natural resources, conserving forests, protecting wildlife, outdoor public recreation opportunities, and then water and agricultural resources. This is the current Highlands boundary map. So as you can see, it's mostly northwest Connecticut. It extends a little bit to the east. Right now, there are plans. The Fish and Wildlife Service is allowing states to expand the region slightly. So right now, DEEP is considering expanding, in all these towns that are adjacent to this. So if you are in one of the communities that's adjacent to the current boundary, you can also reach out if you have a project and say, hey, I'm interested in applying for your open space program. I also would be interested in Highlands, but I'm not in one of the towns that qualifies yet. We can work with the local land trust or municipality to get what's needed for those towns to be added to the boundary. And since 2004, DEEP has received 16 million in grants to conserve about 7,000 acres through the Highlands Conservation Act. Matt Starr in our office is the primary contact. You can reach out to him or myself for questions on that. We apply around November this year, and we will have any new projects. We'll be reaching out to communities across that region to see what projects exist. And I will stop there. I'll stop sharing. I can take questions. It might make the most sense for me to take questions about our grant programs, and then we'll have Yao jump in if there's afterwards with the time that's left for his. I see one hand. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, just a quick question. Keith Landon, New Fairfield Planning Commission Chair. Interesting to see these 3 programs. I'm just curious, are there examples of past successful grants available online so that we can see what, a successful grant looks like?
We don't currently have any up, but if you reach out, we can give you examples of grant applications, or we can put you in touch with organizations or municipalities who have submitted successful ones and have those conversations with them about what it takes. I will say and I'll find the link while Yao is talking so I can put it in the chat. Our guidebook for applying for our open space program is pretty detailed, and it kind of goes along with the application process, so you can see on the score sheet what you would get if you provided this certain information to us. So it's pretty comprehensive, but as you go through that, if there are specific questions, you can reach out to us and we can point you to organizations and groups and municipalities who have had successful applications.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. Whoop, I see a couple in the chat. Is there a maximum limit for Highlands conservation funding? So Highlands conservation funding, because it's paired with our open space grant program, state open space grant program, you can only get combined the two programs, our open space program and the Highlands program, you can only get 90% of the market value of the property. So if you did the appraisal and it came back at, $1 million, you can get 90% of that price as your award for both. So Highlands is also based on the appraisal price, so there's no real upper limit, but the limit is more within the state grant funding statutes. Good question, Diane, on flowing from federal. So I will say that things are slow at the federal level, but with the Highlands Conservation Act, we haven't seen stuff stop. They had one outside the box grant application, a one-time thing where they had a they were trying to fund projects within environmental justice communities. And when the leadership changed, they clawed back that money, but the general money for that program has not gone away and has continued through many different administrations, but is still continued now. It is open right now, and we are still getting projects going through regularly for that grant program, combined with our open space funding. So I don't think there's a huge risk, mostly because the Highlands Conservation Act is under a federal program that got permanently reauthorized and permanently funded. So it would be really, really hard for them to stop the flow of money completely because of the way that it was set up. Will it be slower than usual? Probably, but I think the money will still come, if that helps at all. Anybody else? Yep, go ahead, Adam.
Hi, I represent a very small and inexperienced land trust, and I've read about the accreditation process and wonder whether going through that accreditation process for a very small land trust would strengthen an application process to the extent that it's worth doing. And secondly, if not, would applying through a partner organization that has more experience would be another route to pursue?
That's a good question. I will say I will give a yay for accreditation in that it helps you get aligned with kind of normal practices, but it is not a requirement for our grant funding programs. So we deal with very small land trusts that do one acquisition every 10 years or so, and we deal with bigger land trusts who do work, every year they're doing a new acquisition or multiple acquisitions. So I don't think it's necessary at this point. There might eventually be funding sources that have that as a requirement or make it more easily accessible if you're accredited. And I think actually, yeah, one of your grant programs has an accreditation piece to it. So he'll talk about that later. But for our state funding sources, it's not a requirement. I will say it would be beneficial to have a conversation with one of the land trusts who've gone through the process before, if you've never gone through the process, because there's a lot of like nuanced inside and out, like less so for the application process, but once you're doing the actual acquisition process, there's a lot of little things to pay attention to. So having a conversation with one of the larger land trusts or even Gal's group at CLCC could be beneficial for before going through our process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. There was another one. Are applications reviewed and awarded as they come in, or are they reviewed together after the December deadline? They are reviewed together after the application deadline. So typically the round opens in June and then closes November, December, and then announcements again will be the following June. So it is kind of a long turnaround process, but typically that's the timeline for applications to the grant programs. Anybody else? Happy to take additional questions later if they come up, but we can maybe have Yao do his presentation and then we can both answer questions if they come up. Thank you,
All right.
everybody.
All right. That's good. Can you all see my screen? All right.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So I will be going through 3 of our grant programs at CLCC, starting with our Transaction Assistance Grant Program, which helps with due diligence. And then moving on to our 2 of our acquisitions programs, our Land and Easement Acquisition Program and our Forever Connecticut, our Bridge Loan Fund. So starting off with Transaction Assistance Grant Program, or TAG for short. TAG provides financial assistance to land trusts for transaction-related project costs. And the goal of this program is to help land trusts initiate new projects, bring projects across the finish line, and be responsive to project needs. Sorry. So in order to be eligible for this program, you have to be a current member of CLCC, which means being a 501c3 nonprofit, identifying as a land trust, having the primary mission of conserving and stewarding land in perpetuity, and holding a conservation interest in the project, whether that is through owning the land in fee or holding a conservation easement on that land. And the project must be within Connecticut, and it can be a purchase, bargain sale, or donation of any conservation easement or fee property. So eligible grant sizes and eligible expenses. The maximum award size is $20,000. The exception is for regional land trusts who may apply for a grant within each municipality that they work in. Eligible expenses include appraisal work, which can include the appraisal itself, an appraisal review, and any appraisal updates. Title work, including title searches, title certificate, and title insurance, and phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessments, surveys, and recording fees. Ineligible expenses include legal fees, staff time and salaries, stewardship costs or endowments, management plans, and baseline documentation reports. So in assessing our projects, we look at the eligibility of the land, their applying land trust, and also their capacity, and whether they meet the criteria, show a commitment to taking a project from the beginning to the end, and is well prepared to meet the demands of that project. We also look at the likelihood of success, given the timeline and given any sort of nuances with the project. And also looking at the impact of the conservation project, how it benefits the community, whether it expands access to conserved areas, whether it conserves areas of ecological importance, and aligns with different state, local, and regional conservation goals. We also look at whether the project has secured funding from other sources and whether land trusts are collaborating with each other on a project. And another element we use in our evaluation is innovation, whether there are any sort of innovational, unique elements to your project beyond the traditional land conservation projects. So application process and timeline. Applications are accepted monthly applications are due at the last day of a given month, so long as funds are available. Multiple expenses can be requested in a single application for the same project. And one of the requirements of the program is that 6 months from the application due date, you must complete a transaction and all the reporting requirements. And expenses may not be incurred before the monthly submission deadline. So grant awards and reporting process. Applicants are usually notified approximately 2 weeks after the application deadline. We disperse funding in 2 installments. So 50% of the grant award is dispersed upon getting assigned upon the applicant providing us with a signed grant agreement, a board resolution, and a completed IRS Form W-9. And then the remaining 50% of funding is dispersed once we receive all the relevant invoices associated with the transaction and proof of payments. And in terms of how we award, funding may be awarded in full, in part, or not awarded at all. So moving on to our next program, our Land and Easement Acquisition Program, LEAP. The purpose of this program is to provide grants for land and conservation easement acquisitions. The goals are to accelerate land conservation efforts, bridge funding gaps, leverage funding sources, and ensure timely project completion. In terms of program eligibility, applicants must be CLCC members. The project must be located within Connecticut, but multi-state projects may be considered as long as the project is predominantly in Connecticut. And projects must entail permanent protection through fee simple acquisition by the land trust, a pass through to a partner entity with a mission to permanently protect land, or a permanent conservation easement. And one of the biggest requirements of the program is that projects must close within 12 months or less of grant award notification. So the application process, applications are by invitation only, and that process starts simply with a conversation with me, assessing what are your projects and whether it is suitable for the program. And we look at things such as the conservation benefits, their readiness to close, how much funding you've secured, and the project complexity and risk. For 2026, we are accepting applications. We've been accepting applications. Our next application deadline is August 1st, and we will have another deadline afterwards in October. And applications will be accepted until all funds are fully expended. So sticking on the application process for a minute. So in 2027, there will be a change to the program. So as of now, CLCC administers the program in-house, and it is funded by the Peter Carmen and Lucia Buck Foundation. In 2027, the foundation will be administering the program themselves. So land trusts that are interested in this program would be applying directly to them. And with that change, only accredited land trusts are eligible to apply directly to the foundation. Non-accredited land trusts can still work with us to get funding for their acquisitions. In terms of our evaluation criteria, we have 5 primary principal evaluation criteria we look at: biodiversity and habitat, landscape connectivity, climate resilience, water resources, and public access and accessibility. And these criteria align well with CTD's open space and land acquisition grant program. And so with this, so land trusts that are applying to the state's open space program can also apply to us to get the funding that they need to close on their projects. So pairing both funding sources. In terms of our grant payment and reporting process, payments are issued into escrow or directly to the land trust, and we disperse funding after receiving these documents. And upon closing, the closeout process includes the applicant sending us the recorded deed or easements and the final closing or settlement statements. Then our last program is our Forever Connecticut Fund. And so this fund provides land trusts with bridge loans. And the program is designed to help land trusts act quickly on conservation opportunities, enable the protection of high priority conservation lands, strengthen land trust financial and organizational capacity, and maximize conservation impact by recycling capital over time. an element of this program is capacity building. So potential applicants are coached on how to borrow. You're provided technical support in terms of fundraising, and you receive support from application all the way through repayment. Funds can be used for the acquisition of natural and working lands, including fee simple and conservation easements. Loan funds may not be used for transaction costs or stewardship costs. In terms of loan terms, our minimum loan amount is $50,000. Maximum will be determined on a case-by-case basis. Loan maturity will range from 12 to 24 months, and currently our interest rate is fixed at 3%. And loan security is required, and the form of security can vary based on your project and your project, its complexity, and any nuances with it. So loan evaluation. So we take a look at the project characteristics. So the conservation benefits, the urgency to closing, the readiness and its feasibility, the organizational capacity. So the organizations or the borrower's transaction experience, financial health, governance and leadership, any risk considerations, the borrower's capacity, the adequacy and nature of collateral that is offered, and the loan to value ratio, and repayments, whether there is a clearly defined source of repayment and whether that timeline towards repayment is realistic. And we will stop there for questions. And before, and I am going to put in the chat the link to our work page, providing an overview of all of our funding programs. I went through that very quickly, but now that we've paused, I can go back to any of the slides if anyone has questions. Yes, the recording will be provided to the group. And so for the first info session, that recording is already on our YouTube. And so you can review that recording as well for any questions that attendees may have had that you have not thought of yourself. Keith.
Yeah, thanks, Yao. I mean, obviously, my perspective is more from the municipality perspective. So I'm wondering, for your programs, do you see municipalities partnering with land conservation groups to go through, or is this, or is are your programs more for the land conservancy organizations?
So they're more so for the land trust, but we do have instances where land trusts are working with municipalities to conserve a piece of land. And so one example that comes to mind is land trust is working with your municipality to quickly purchase land. So the municipality is going to purchase that land first, and the land trust is essentially going to buy the land from the municipality because they cannot themselves raise the funds quickly enough to do that. So that's one partnership we've seen. I've seen partnerships where a land trust acquires land and then the municipality is providing funding, but also then holding a conservation easement on that piece of land.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we've had projects like that too, where the land trust might be the primary holder, but the municipality is providing some funding source, and so they're a partner in it, and they take some interest in the property. Which, if the land trust is involved, then they can take advantage of Yao's programs. I also came off mute because I put both the links for our open space grant program and our urban green and community garden grant program into the chat, so you guys can take a look at the materials that are up on the website, and go through them. Keith, what town did you say you were in? What municipality?
New Fairfield. So I'm also in the Highlands area. So I
Okay,
was interested in
gotcha.
that.
All right. Um, Marion, so in terms of the federal required local project, you can reach out to my office. You can reach out to myself. I'll put my email in the chat as well. But maybe if you gave some more details in an email or a phone call, we can kind of point you in the right direction. There's other state funding sources. We have our Rec Trails program. We have some urban forestry programs. We have Climate Resilience Fund. There are a lot of grant programs. So depending on the project, someone in my office or someone else within Deep can help point you to some potential funding sources for state funding. But we also have an eye to what some of the federal funding sources are outside of the ones we manage, and we might be able to point you in the right direction.
I don't know if you can hear me. I'm trying to say thank you.
Yeah. I can hear you now. And then Danielle wrote, can you estimate how competitive or difficult it is to get the grants? So for our open space grant programs, and I'll let Yao speak on theirs, but for our open space acquisition grant program, right now there is funding available. So the competition is not super high. So I would say most years we're funding all projects that apply, and hopefully at the highest level we can award them. And then for our urban green and community garden program, the way that one is set up, we can only give out 20% of the total grants for both our open space and our urban green and community garden program per year for that program. A little bit confusing, and I apologize. So that one has kind of a ceiling depending on how many open space grants come in. So this past year we got applications for, and it's growing, but this past year we got applications for like 3 million and we gave out 2.4 million, and we didn't fund 2 projects. So 2 out of 17 applications didn't get funded, but 15 of them did. So it's competitive, but it's not highly competitive if you have a good project. Hopefully that helps. And then I don't know, Yao, about yours.
Yeah, so as long as we have funding, 99% of applicants get funded. So the only sort of because using tag as an example, because that is on a monthly basis, we get a trickle in of applications. Some months we get 1 application, other months we might get 5 or 6. And it gets, so to speak, competitive once we reach actually during the fall, time where we have perhaps $30,000 left of our funding pot, and that then we just have to decide a bit more, which project gets our funding. But overall, as long as we have funding, we'll work with you to get you funded.
Good questions.
I have another question if I can just jump in.
Yeah.
The particular opportunity that has gotten us involved in this right now is that an owner is selling a parcel, and he's not particularly interested in conservation necessarily, highest dollar, and so timing is an issue. And if I understand correctly, the resources that are available for bridge loans and so on, and other application process assistance, really only after you've moved through the process of acquiring the property, and we're in a situation where we need we need the resources in order to capture the interest of the seller, so to speak.
Yeah. So yeah, I think your programs probably are more helpful for that. Our programs, and we hear this a lot, we wish the state could move faster, and I wish we could too. But we've been trying to come up with creative ways to work on that, and CLCC's bridge loan funding is something that we have been talking about with them for many years. So it's exciting to see that coming to fruition. We've also had some entities work with some larger groups. So like for instance, and I don't think they're on the call, but like Trust for Public Land is a group that often gets involved with various acquisitions across the state. There's other ones too, but they're one of the bigger ones, and they sort of help with that kind of bridging the gap, and they will get into a purchase and sales agreement, and they will move forward with an acquisition prior, and then afterwards the land trust will take ownership. So
Mhm.
there are potential options for getting you there faster, depending on the project. And I think Yao's funding source is kind of directly towards that. So maybe, yeah, you can speak more to how the bridge funding works for organizations.
Yeah, and I think we can actually start with the transaction assistance grant program first. So depending on where you are in the phase of your project, if you needed an appraisal to start negotiations with the landowner, you could come directly to us for that funding to help, yeah, to help with that transaction. And in terms of navigating through the timeline of the process, we can work together either through if you really need to close on something quickly, we can go through our bridge loan program. I'll work with you to fill out the application. We'll get that reviewed. And once that is reviewed and approved by a loan committee, you get the funding you need to take towards closing. But if you have a bit more time, I mean, you can also go through our LEAP program, and that we accept applications bi-monthly, and usually we have somewhat of a quick turnaround. We would take approximately about 2 months to review and then get back to you. But if you needed to hear from us before that award notification date, we can speed up things on our end to help you get the information you need. So all to say is that
Just to,
we can have a conversation and we can help.
Mhm. Thank you.
on this particular one that Adam's referring to, it's down in our mission area. We introduced honor and TPL to the folks there to go, and they've actually, I think, talked to the owners on it. It's $1 million property, so it's a big deal. And TPL, we found we've done now several projects with them, and we're working on 2 this year. They will probably be OSWA applications where they've got the wherewithal to have the contract, et cetera. And they might not even have to do an appraisal up front. So they can get the contract letter of intent, get those things put in place without having to do the expenditures, but still have the wherewithal as an organization as large as they are. They did the Girl Scout camp, for example, Camp Laurel, 343 acres that we're acquiring, the Cops Brook that we acquired through them, et cetera. And this may be another one. We're working with them on a couple of those right now. But your programs are great, Yao. Lindsay, thank you both for having all those programs. Sometimes it's people to get in there and just get the property locked up before it
I was
ends
going
up
to say
being
Dennis is a
developed.
great
So
contact for you, Adam, if you guys are in touch, because he's
Yeah.
done a lot of acquisitions through our various grant programs, so he knows the ins and outs and can help walk through stuff with you.
Yes, thank you. And he put us, as he said, in touch with
Yeah.
Honor Lawler
and
at
just
Yale.
and just one other plug for what Adam was talking about earlier on accreditation. I consider it extremely important. When we started that 2014, 13. Actually, it was before that. In the 2011, so people started looking at it. By 14, we kicked it off. By 17, we got accredited. We just merged with 2 other land trusts, Salem and Colchester Land Trust, as of July 1st, for those who are not aware, who were great long-term organizations, but they saw the benefit. The economies of scale, the elimination of redundancy and administrative and financial resources, et cetera. So they just merged in with us, and they've done some hospice themselves, et cetera. So we just brought that in-house, and that's really kind of the focus. I wouldn't encourage a small land trust to go out and spend all that time on getting accredited.
Yeah.
And Amy and Yao and folks over at CLC, can sort of underscore that too. I think a better bet is looking at the whole consolidation, partnership, merger.
I think also I
into
would,
the accreditation stream via
yeah, I would say
somebody already
Dennis
being
too.
accredited.
If they're not interested, if a group is not interested in merger, just taking a look at what is required for accreditation can help you think through like some of the things you need to work on through your organization, even if you don't actually apply for accreditation. It's a valuable resource to understand some of the ins and outs.
And their insurance is great too.
Anybody else? Well, I'm excited to see all your applications. If you do have questions, feel free to reach out to any of the contacts that were in my presentation, but also myself. I put my email address on there and I'll point you to the best staff to get you an answer.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Yao.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you
all
very
for
Thanks
much.
being
very
here.
much. Really
Have
well
a good
done.
night.
Good night.
Bye.